Can I personally thank everyone who's came here again, and all the new people, just huge thank you for coming along. Disappointed that Ronnie's gone. He was out singing to us earlier, and he set up a Facebook group, and he's encouraged people to come along and join us. And it's so good to see that we're almost doubling in size. I don't mean physically like this, but in terms of numbers. And you've seen from and heard from so many speakers, the quality of discussion. I think we hang around usually afterwards and debate and talk about things. And again, of course, Laura set this up at the start, Laura Gilmartin, and it's been tremendous what she's done. Keep it going, Laura. So we're hoping to hook up with a few other Facebook groups and keep this building until it's a movement. Everyone knows, I mean, our last speaker there, I must get a note of your name for the video, because I'm not very good with names. The last speaker was talking about the masks. Now that is the imposition on everyone in Scotland now. If you're going into a shop, it was Sarah that said last week, the legislation does not allow people in shops to tell us you must stop, get a mask on, and you can't enter the shop. They're not allowed to challenge you. They're not allowed to challenge you. People at shops do not have the power of a police constable. They cannot stop you and arrest you. They are not police officers. The only people that have got that power are police officers and public health officers. Yeah. There are people who are bullying people, and they're just jumped up. People that are just abusing their position. So people should make formal complaints to the management about that. They don't have the authority to stop you and make any demands of you whatsoever. And the police have that.
No man or woman can make a demand of any other man or woman unless they have the consent of that man or woman.
That's it. It's about civil liberties, it's about rights, it's human rights.
Common law.
So they're still telling us that the masks are going to be essential, like seat belts, and that we'll get used to this. Seat belts took me a wee while to get used to it. I think I got fined once a few years back. It's fair enough, that makes sense. There's a high impact, so it's going to save your life. As we heard earlier, there's serious scientific debate about even the veracity of the science saying there is such a virus called COVID-19. If you listen to some experts, they're saying DNA fragments that we call exosomes can be exhaled, etc. There's that. Now, so if you were explaining the science, you would say there's 5 or 6 or 7 different groups where you could say there is no absolute certainty amongst any of it, even the testing. If there was a highly lethal pathogen let loose deliberately or accidentally, and it did go over various countries, the tracking and tracing should have been at the start. If you've seen the fictitious piece of propaganda called Contagion, which I watched this week, the track and trace, the CDC were there quicker than an Eaglesham painter and decorator with a CDC van, and they tracked and traced the first guy. They were foot on the person, got them, That came out in 2011. Anyone piecing together the jigsaw puzzles will realise that Hollywood tends to be slightly influenced by a bunch of guys in the intelligence service. 2010, Rockefeller paper, if you haven't looked at it yet, Lockstep, Rockefeller Institute, look at Lockstep. All of the nations of the world that are complying with this are literally tied and marching in lockstep and forcing their people to wear masks. I just seen a perfect demonstration of a CO2 detector. Simona's purchased one, and 10-15 minutes ago there she was just showing that as soon as you even put a visor and a mask over your face, the CO2, I stood and watched the register. It would be nice if we could put this onto a video, but this can be found on the internet anyway. The CO2 register was averaging about 500 parts per million, and it started to go up, even with a visor, where you might think there's more space. 600, 700, and rising within 1 minute or so. Wearing that all day. So I'm saying to you, we've seen the proof. You can check. Anyone who is here who wants to have a demonstration to see that that is fact, I'm sure that someone would be generous enough just to do another demonstration at some point and let people know if you have any doubts. So let's put the message out clear to people. You are, as the last speaker said, damaging your immune system by wearing a mask all day. So why are scientific advisors in the Scottish government and in the British government telling people to wear masks and damage their health? It's lowering your immune system, and it is trapping stuff in. You're not getting rid of the CO2 properly. You're re-inhalating it. Re-inhalation. Well, my background, one of the first degree was in history. And let me point out, if you have not looked at this document yet, please look at it. And it's called A World at Risk. Now, historians talk about primary documents, primary sources. This is a primary source that really should be brought to some court. And I've got some pages of it here. And this primary document, A World at Risk, September 2019, talks about progress indicators by September 2020. And I'm going to read from it. Here's some of the points, right? Some of the points are listed on here. I'm going to read one of the points. And one of the points states, and these are progress indicators by September 2020, by which the WHO and the United Nations are monitoring what is happening during this pandemic. And one of them talks about the United Nations, including the WHO, conducts at least 2 system-wide training and simulation exercises, including one covering the deliberate release of a lethal respiratory pathogen. All of what we have seen over the last few months, whether there is a virus or not, you may debate that as a moot point, has been a massive exercise by the United Nations as a means of showing the power that they have. And every bit of A World at Risk paper echoes the statements of Mr. Bill Gates. Every bit. Go to his TED Talk and you read through this. A recent interview, he says, the cost to the world economy, probably about 3 trillion, just off the top of his head, since the guy's such a genius. Where do you find the total worked out? A world at risk. And the automatic thing, that to talk about something and say, this is not conspiracy, it's fact. Watch the one-to-many hymn sheet, one-to-many hymn sheet, when everyone was telling, all the government leaders, including ours, were saying, we've all got to basically flatten the curve until the vaccine comes out. And then we had Gates behind the scenes saying, you can get your vaccine passport. Now, decode that, crunch that down to what it means. Your freedom, my freedom, every human being under the cabal's power, they're going to try and dictate that our bloody freedom is when they will tell us we are free. Now, if we do not awaken and rise up to that through indignation, through the spark of Christ in every one of us, then bloody hell, help us. There's a number of people, the number of people have said to me over the last few months, a number of people have said to me, it's like, there's something no right in the Scots language. Then the next thing is, God help us. And recently I heard a hero of mine, I'm not going to get too religious on you, Roger Waters talking to Varoufakis. And Roger said, I have in me a reservoir of human empathy for my brothers and sisters in every country. And I'm going to keep fighting to stand up for them, for the voiceless and the kids that don't know and those that don't understand and the various people who are worthy brothers and sisters of mine. Roger Waters, I love you to bits, man. You're a brother and sister. Absolutely wonderful. And then we have, let's hear it for, I want to see him as an honorary Scot. He's welcome to come here and speak to us anytime, because I want to shake his hand. Dr. Vernon Coleman. What a hero. What a hero he is. I try and put comments in every video, and he's just getting tougher and tougher. Last week I thought I went a bit over the top because I swore a couple of times just through indignation. And back home, watched Dr. Vernon Coleman. I think he used the B word twice, F word once, and I'm thinking this English gentleman's losing the plot here, yeah, because he is an old man in a chair. Yeah. What a genius he is.
Distrust the government.
Right, I don't know where to go from here. Oh yeah,
Avoid mass media.
I put the video out, so I tried to video most of the stuff and put it up. But I put one out saying Scots politician calls for the arrest of Bill Gates. It got about 300 views and then it was taken down. So I'll take that as an accolade. I mean, I'm wearing the Cumbernauld Athletics Club t-shirt just now, and I managed to win a few medals a few years ago with them. I was quite chuffed about that. It was fun. But the nicest accolade of all to win is to get a video where you're expressing your views and your right to speak taken down by YouTube. The last few years we'd hear stuff coming on the news saying the BBC broadcasting crew that they are, saying how terrible China was with their human rights, suppressing people's freedoms, doing this and doing that. Where are the politicians in Scotland saying our people's rights to express their views, my right to express my view, was deleted? These are points of view. That's all they are. They're discussions, debates, arguments based on evidence and looking at just, is the evidence worth it here? We can change our viewpoints. We can make a statement and go, there's better evidence. Peter just explained stuff to us about X, Y, and Z, or somebody else. I mean, you can change your viewpoint. This meeting here, and the gathering that's been here, started off with Laura about anti-lockdown and wanting to educate people about 5G. But the real message about electromagnetic radiation has got to be, it hurts. The science shows overwhelmingly that it damages people's immune system. It damages DNA strands. It causes cancers. Younger people are getting more and more brain cancers. But the medical people are not trained in diagnostics of looking for, if someone's sitting there with a laptop on their thigh for 6-7 years, and they end up with certain types of cancer down here, or cancers of the abdomen or whatever, the doctors are not looking to say, or a question, and they should be, have you been using electromagnetic radiation devices? Have you got Wi-Fi in your house?
They wouldn't do that.
The science is overwhelming, and yet people are, because of the power, something I tried to put across passionately last week, the power of corporate industry is so powerful. They buy the newspapers. The newspapers are owned by the elites, and that 1% elite own the telecoms industry, and they buy, as Laura explained earlier, the different types of frequencies to broadcast stuff, and most of us are using phones. So all we are looking for here is better, safer use of the EMFs and a rolling back of 5G. It's not even essential. And a point that was made earlier, if you look at the work of Dr. Randy Tent, Dr. Randy Tent explains, I found this one like a rabbit hole too far for me. I paused it. I could not believe it. He was talking about radiation being used by the CIA after the injection of viruses, and this is what the CIA were working on in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, electromagnetic radiation hitting viruses they've injected into someone so they could speed up the cancers and they would kill them. A form of assassination. I paused that and thought, this is insane. This is I just, cognitive dissonance, I just thought, this is just beyond it. And it's even the same. I was the same with a friend saying, about geoengineering. Look at the streaks in the sky. And I thought, it's a few years ago, I thought that guy was too much of the wacky-backy and was a wee bit on the moon juice or something. And that's what we're all more or less brainwashed to think, that there's various issues like geoengineering, like EMFs, electromagnetic radiation. It's all nonsense. The scientists settled. It's a bit like saying vaccines are all safe. They're not safe. Dr. Vernon Coleman, read his stuff on that. And there was a guy in the HIH who said, the only safe vaccine is one that is never used. We do have an immune system. It disappointed me hugely that the Scottish Government, when this pandemic started, and as someone mentioned earlier on, the start was just a massive crank-up propaganda war of fear. And fear shuts down your immune system. It shuts it down and you get a pumping of cortisol get into your body, fight or flight. And what does that do? It flattens your immune system. And as soon as your immune system's flat, any disease that is latent, that your immune system was controlling and suppressing, will come out. So disease can come from, split it in two areas, disease can come from the outside into you or from the inside out. And what will happen when your immune system collapses is any diseases or whatever that were latent are going to arise and come out. So if you've got something like Epstein-Barr or some of the viruses or monkey viruses carried over in SV40, if you're American, and I think that's the polio vaccine was used. There was over 200 million Americans injected with that vaccine, and they carried 40 monkey viruses into that generation, which went on to create brain cancers. This is not for debate. The American elite suppressed it and tried to bury it. The science knows this. Watch Randy Tent, Dr. Randy Tent, R.E. Tent, and his autoimmune lecture. And I think there is going to be a debate, because I, for one, will be saying, like most people here, I will not be taking a vaccine. My personal suspicions are that some of the people who have died in the last 6 months, and God bless every one of them, hopefully they're safe where they are now. That people getting the flu vaccine, if you're given the flu vaccine, and the basic presumption is one size fits all, they never check if your immune system is working, if your antibodies, if your vitamin D level is high enough, they just simply, in you come, you're another number, they're safe. It's faith. Simona talked very eloquently earlier about faith, and faith in Christ and faith in God. We give far too much faith to leaders. We give faith, doctors and nurses give far too much faith to the assumption that vaccines are safe. Even if you look at some of the information and data from those that are for vaccines, they admit aluminium, formaldehyde, mercury, the whole lot. DNA.
Babies' fetus.
Yeah, of course.
My question always, like white cells,
when my daughter's vaccinated, because I didn't know as much then. I was hoping to get any more from a normal age.
Yeah.
But when people
Well said, you.
vaccines also, are you aware that there are laws in place that mean that they cannot be sued?
Aye.
Why do they need these laws in place?
Exactly.
If the vaccines were safe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. I missed that point, so thank you for making that point for us.
There was a 30% drop
The
on...
compensation.
I think there was a 30% drop on crib deaths as well, because kids weren't vaccinated.
Yeah. Right.
My my friend had a baby in England. She's originally from Ireland, and she just had a baby, and I got on Messenger to put, because I'm getting blocked like crazy. I've got all these bots, you know, when you go to share something on Messenger, I've got all these bots, and some of my family members that are dead, with their account was closed down on there, right? This is how nasty they are. So I called her on the Messenger phone, and sometimes I get a little interference as well when I talk about certain things. And I said to her, the baby was about 6 weeks old, and I said, do me a favour, don't vaccinate your child for a long time. Because, and she said her sister had 3 children, and she held off the vaccinations till they were a lot older. So I said, don't even go to a curbside, because she drives, to get back the kid vaccinated. Don't do it. And she didn't do it.
Yeah, well said. I'll finish off, folks, by saying that could we try to do some sort of email campaign to the Scottish Government and say we need to boost our immune system, and we should be using vitamin C and vitamin D3. D3 along with K2 as well. What's CBD2?
And zinc.
And zinc, yeah.
Not vitamin D, D3.
D3?
They don't tell you, and my mum's in a nursing home. She's been in the nursing home for a year now. I came over from America to take care of her 3 years ago, and I had to put her in because she's got the dementia and it's getting bad. It was the biggest regret I ever did, when I never got a chance to speak to the doctor about certain things that I wanted to see my mum get, right? And they poo-pooed me off in the nursing home. Well, that's not what the doctor are. My mum lost a lot of weight, so I said, why can't she have Ensure? They said they had to wait 12 weeks to see how her weight was going. They would send a dietitian in, and then the dietitian would get in touch with the doctor for the doctor to prescribe it. But I could take the Ensure in myself and give her it. They couldn't stop me, right? But they weren't allowed to give her Ensure.
They would let you give her it?
Yes.
You wouldn't do it?
They weren't allowed to do it.
How wrong is that? Or how right is that? More to the point. How right is that? That you
It's okay.
So the other thing was when this lockdown happened, because I tried to get her phone number to call her a few times about my concerns, because I worked in a nursing home for 20 years, and I worked in a children's hospital for 3 or 4 years to hurt my back. When she called, I was told she was going to call. When she called me, the first thing out her mouth was, what's your mum's last wishes? Now, my mum was on a DNR anyway, a do not resuscitate, because she didn't want to be resuscitated all these years. And I said to her, why the hell are you calling me to ask me about my mum's end of life? So she was like, well, I just want to know. I says, well, all that information is in the nursing home when I first signed her in, right? And I said to her, what vitamins are you giving my mum? Vitamin D. And I says, well, what about vitamin C with zinc? Oh, what? And I said, these old people should be getting all these vitamins because most of them don't see the light of day. True. I said, and their immune system is crashing, and that's why a lot of them get infections and they die.
Same thing happening all over the world.
Yeah, but you know what happened? I said to her, she said, well, oh, the vitamin C. And I said, look, if I buy the vitamin C with the zinc in it, could you please call the nursing home and tell them they have to give it to my mum? I put out my pocket to get my mum the vitamin C for the zinc, and I don't even know if she's getting it because I'm not being allowed in.
So can I just ask,
You
were just about to say about an email campaign. I also would love an email campaign to ask the Scottish Government about the risk assessment they have done about healthy people wearing masks and the long-term effect on that. I have already done it and I've not got an answer yet.
To say next is we should start bombarding the Scottish Government, that's a perfect way of putting it, about where's the risk assessment that masks will do any good. Yeah, but when we look at the connections higher up, and I mean from the United Nations coming down to the WHO, what we have is that one-to-many tying in. And the tying in, and what I mean by it's the lockstep tie-in, right? And it's under the International Health Regulations 2005. Listed in the paper A World at Risk. International health regulations. These are laws signed up by the British government, and the situation is that the outcome is being measured by September 2020, just a few months away now, is what, if you look at the paper, A World at Risk, it is so pedantic. They're saying you must do this, you must do that, and the simulations, etc. So all of this is being monitored, and it is the United Nations boot of instruction basically telling people they will wear masks. And what this is doing, in my view, is nothing but a programming exercise where the people are to be controlled like dogs being chipped. That is what's coming next, because it's the vaccine and the control, and it's the New World Order cabal. I'm not going to shout about it, I'm going to try and be quiet about it this time. And
smile about it then.
with all this stuff going on, sorry, the last note from me, with all of this stuff going on, I effectively see, you can't really call it a coup d'etat. The tanks didn't roll in to the Scottish capital. It wasn't like that. It's not a putsch. But what we basically have is the UN taking control of the Scottish Government and telling them what to do in lockstep. Now, there must be an inquiry about what happened in the old folks' homes. Whether there was influence of Wi-Fi radiation, whether it was just massive fear, or whether there was an infected, to send people, to shut the NHS off, to shut it down. Nye Bevan created it with a slogan, from the cradle to the grave, it would serve us. And people paid their taxes into it. What's it been turned into when they kicked patients out the doors who were in there for serious operations, life-threatening stuff, and we allowed a political elite to make a decision that says send them home, and they were only in hospital because their lives were threatened. No wonder so many people died, and the infection was spread into the care homes. So that whole chaos, there must be accountability for that. If there's not accountability for it in this life, there will be in the next one. But the last thing I want to comment is, I'm very disappointed by the leaders in Scotland. I've seen the video of the First Minister saying about people dying from this, and then she said, vaccine. You know, and I thought, was that a slip of the tongue from the Privy Council? Do you know something? Right Honourable? There's no other MSP in Scotland that has this title, Right Honourable, other than the First Minister. She is privy to information. I marched with Alex Salmond quite a few years ago, and I voted for the independence campaign. I'm no longer a member of that party, right? But I remember Alex's speech when he resigned, and he said, the dream will never die. I tell you what, see if our MSPs stay as silent as they are just now and don't stand up for things like the kids' better health with electromagnetic radiation, with the stuff about possible forced vaccination, which might have some sort of chip put in it. When all of these things threaten the health and population of Scotland, and our elected officials have got a collective silence, then it echoes the words of Burns in his ode for General Washington's birthday, where he says, where is the soul of freedom fled? He mingled with the mighty dead. Thank you.